Can this bootleg bottle of Old Forester 1915 stand up to the other two original Old Foresters? Let's put it to the test in tonight's Simple Triple. Stay tuned.
Simple whiskey, Cyncere. Here to keep it 100, what's the ABV? Keep it simple. Simple whiskey, and be sweeter.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Simple Whiskey Show. I'm Cyncere, and tonight we're blind tasting two regular Old Forester bottles and one concoction that I whipped up called 1915. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on your notification bells to stay up to date on all things Simple Whiskey. Let's get started. For those of you who may not know this, 1915 is literally just a mix of Old Forester 1920 and Old Forester 1910. Split the difference, thus 1915. Does taste a little bit funny if you do sip it immediately after mixing. You got to give it a little bit of time for those flavors to mesh together and blend well. I've had this bottle here since I think close to June, July. So it's had plenty of time to get comfortable, and if you see what I've taken out of it so far, obviously I like it. The day that I put them in the bottle, I shook the bottle up like that was gonna really blend them, poured me a little sip of it, and it just didn't do it for me. After coming back to it 4 to 6 weeks later, that's when I started to notice some of the more unique characteristics of each blending together. Anywho, a little whiskey history. George Garvin Brown founded Old Forester back in 1870. One of their claims to fame is that Old Forester was one of the first bottles sold in sealed glass bottles as opposed to the barrels like you see in the rick houses. During Prohibition, Brown-Forman was one of 6 distilleries licensed to sell medicinal alcohol or medicinal bourbon back during Prohibition, which kind of makes sense since Mr. Brown was a former pharmaceutical salesman. He had the connections. Old Forester 1910 and 1920 are two of my go-to bourbons. Typically, I keep one on the shelf. Like I said, I just finished off the rest of my 1910. That's why I couldn't let it join the fun tonight. While I do enjoy the history behind the juice, enough of the chit-chat, let's get to sipping. If you're familiar with the way that I do blinds, then you know the routine. If you're new to the channel, I go through, nose, sip each whiskey, eliminate one, wash, rinse, repeat, do it until I run out of whiskeys and I have a winner. Given I only have 3, hopefully I won't keep you too long, but when the whiskey gets to flowing, who knows? First sip of the night, I do anticipate this being a little hot, so I may go back through each of them the first round at least twice just to make sure, get the full flavor without that initial burn you get from the first sip of the night. Again, all of these are I think 90 plus, all the way up to 115 proof. Ooh, nice oaky note on the nose. Like a vanilla maybe, a little bit of vanilla. Let's see what we get on the palate. I get a toasted nutty flavor, a lot of vanilla, a little bit of a bite to it, first sip of the night. Sometimes it doesn't bother me, it definitely hit me a little bit stronger, a little cinnamon spice. I'm surprised at just how much vanilla I get because I don't really recall a strong vanilla note. I usually get vanilla on the nose on some of them. I know on Old Forester 1920, I usually get like a banana nut bread, but we'll see. Let's go to B. Almost like a nutmeg, a little bit of cinnamon on this one. Not quite as oaky as the first one. I get a little bit of a chocolatey, like a chocolate muffin. It's like a baked note, but it has some aftertaste of a little bit of chocolate. So like a baked muffin, semi-sweet chocolate chips is kind of what I get on this one. Let's dive into C. That is a hefty pour. Toasted oak, vanilla, some sort of a baking spice on this one too, maybe even nutmeg. Let's see what we get on the taste. That was extremely smooth. A little bit of like dark chocolate this time around, maybe a little bit of espresso. Decent punch of flavors. I am gonna go back through them now that my palate is opened up, and let's see what I get through this time. Okay, so A. Oh yeah, definitely get a lot of caramel on that nose. A little bit of oak on the palate. That caramel shines through a little bit. Not quite Booker's peanuts, but definitely some sort of a nuttiness on this. And then a little bit of nutmeg as well. Again, as the first pour of the night, as your palate starts to open up, as you go through these, they smooth out a little bit. You start to really embrace some of the notes that you get. You no longer get that punch that you get on the end of it or that bite that you get on your first couple of sips, but that's a really good pour. Okay, so let's try B. All of these are nice and dark in color. Appear to be very viscous, a lot of legs going down the glass. Definitely get a little bit of oak on this one. It's almost dull though. It's not quite as pungent as glass A. Almost like a double oak taste, like that maple, a little bit of that sweetness that you get from a double oaked. But then on the flip side, I also get a little bit of baking spice in this one too, a little bit of vanilla as well. I really like that. That's pretty decent. Let's try C. Okay, so definitely a richer caramel note on this one. I get like almost like a dark cherry, like a maraschino cherry note on the nose too. Let's see what we get on the palate. Get a dark chocolatey note, almost like a mocha latte, like some sort of like a coffee note mixed with a nice chocolate note. A little bit of that baking spice, almost like a banana nut bread, banana nut muffin type vibes. But super smooth, super good. Usually when I've went through and taken time to try to warm up, I have a clear picture in my mind which one at least is gonna go out first. But tonight, I think I'm gonna have to get rid of A. So we're down to B and C. Going back through, already warmed up at this point. Palate's feeling right, brain waves are flowing, juice is flowing. Let's see what we get. Oh my gosh, the caramel note just comes through something heavy, like a good caramel. I love the caramel notes I get on a good bourbon, but the caramel note shines through like something different on this one. And I still get that nice smooth oaky note. I think the 1924 is 100 proof, and then 1920 I believe is 115 proof. None of these are drinking as hot as 115 proof. So that scares me. I hope I haven't put out 1920 because I do tend to put 1920 in my list of everyday sippers versus Friday night pours and whiskeys I can't live without. 1910 or 1920 always makes it on that list. I do get a little bit of that banana note, but nowhere near as much as I usually get on 1920. But I'm also not typically sipping these back to back with three other whiskeys. So let's see what we get on C this time. The chocolate note I get on this is super smooth. For a dark chocolate note, it's very smooth. And that caramel note almost goes like a butterscotch that's go around. I guess the real question is which bottle is gonna win? If I'm gonna go all things, not just nose, but not just palate, but nose, palate, complexity, I know who my winner is. C is out. B is my winner. Now that we've got B picked as the winner, so A was the first one to go out. And A, 1924. 1924 came out this year, and I fought to try to find a bottle. Finally got a bottle. And to be honest, I was a bit underwhelmed with what I got. I thought this was gonna be like bottle of the year type material, and instead, I've only went to this one a few times the weekend after I got it, and then after that, I've shared it with a few folks that have came down here. It's not a bad whiskey. I was just disappointed because I had really high expectations. Anything from Old Forester to me is a solid pour. So, second one that went out was C. C was the 1920 and gave me that chocolate, that banana nut bread, the caramel that turned into butterscotch at the end. But something about it just was not quite as complex as what I was getting from B, which apparently is my hodgepodge mix of 1910 and 1920 that ended up winning tonight. I didn't anticipate this one winning. I thought this one might get a second or a third. To get that nutmeg, to get that banana nut muffin, and some of those other notes that I got on this, I think that a lot of the 1920 shine through, but then the chocolatey and the sweeter notes that you get from 1910 also came through a whole lot, both on the nose and on the palate. So, I mean, 1915 is already technically a blend, so that nose, I get a sweet, like a maple syrup on the nose with the three combined. So I get a lot of the stronger notes you usually get, but I get that maple syrup still shines through that I don't believe I got when any one particular bottle was separate. I didn't get as much of the maple syrup as what I thought I would. But I don't know if it's that 1924 blending in with the other two that mellows them out and sweetens them up a little bit. But 3 combined is a good pour. So I'm pleased to sip this while I edit the video. So cheers. Tasting whiskey blind is also a reminder of how much we rely on labels, reputations, expectations. It's amazing how each pour has its own personality, a unique story, and an even more unique way of surprising us. And just maybe, life's a bit like a good whiskey. It's best experienced without preconceived notions. Savoring each sip, embracing the unexpected. Thanks for joining me across my journey, and if you're new to the channel, don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on your notification bells, and stay up to date on all things Cynple whiskey. And until next time, may your glasses be full and your stories be fuller. Keep it simple. Cheers.